Hey guys, what's going on? Anthony here with Pistons Talk. Hope you guys are having a great night so far. In today's video, wanted to do a reaction video to an article ESPN wrote. They wrote a free agency piece about 10 free agents and the type of deals they think that these players should get. The Detroit Pistons were actually mentioned for two of these players that they could possibly target in free agency. We've talked about one ad nauseum a little bit. There's another one that I've talked about a little bit, but not too much as of late. So we're going to talk about two of these players and kind of just go over this article written by Bobby Marks of ESPN. So let's get to it. The first player we're going to be talking about is Naz Reid, probably one of your guys' favorite, free agent targets for the Detroit Pistons to add more size in the front court. Bobby Marks of ESPN has the best fits for him as Minnesota and Detroit. That's why we're talking about him today. And the deal that he would offer is 3 years, $57 million. The final year is a player option. Now, he does go into detail of kind of contract situations for him to stay in Minnesota, and also kind of touches on the Pistons and how they could create cap space to kind of lure him away from Minnesota. So it says, because of the Timberwolves finances the majority of other teams with no more than $14.1 million to spend in free agency, Reid's next contract is difficult to project, despite the former Sixth Man of the Year having his best season. By declining the $15 million player option and signing a 3-year, $57 million contract with the Timberwolves or a team that has cap space, Reid can get a slight increase in salary. More importantly, he has the option to extend or become a free agent in 2027. The Pistons, meanwhile, could create up to $17 million in cap space, or possibly more with a trade, but expenses of free agents like Tim Hardaway Jr., Dennis Schroeder, and Malik Beasley. Minnesota and Reid could reach an extension before the start of free agency, or he could opt into his contract and then extend in July. Reid is allowed to sign a 4-year, $87.2 million extension starting on June 27th. The $15 million player option for next season is replaced with a starting salary of $19 million. Reid could also opt in and then sign a 4-year, $94.2 million extension. The $21 million salary in the first year would start next season in 2026, 2027. So Bobby kind of outlined a lot of situations for Minnesota to keep Naz Reid there. We made a video this week talking about how Chris Finch thinks that Naz is going to stay. There have been reports that he is looking to opt out and kind of test the waters a little bit. So there's a lot of reports about him as a free agent. I've told you guys before, I think he could get $100 million on the open market. I really do. I think he's that type of player. The way the contracts are going up, I think he could easily get $20 to $25 million a year. In my personal opinion, that's just my opinion, though. Bobby outlined a 3-year, $57 million contract, and then possibly having an extension in a few years to kind of up his salary. That way, the best fits Minnesota and Detroit. You guys, I would love a Naz Reid in Detroit. I do think the Pistons would have to create some cap space, more money, especially with Cade Cunningham's All-NBA going up and the Pistons losing a little bit of cap space there. Like he had mentioned, like a Tim Hardaway Jr., a Dennis Schroeder, and Malik Beasley. So you would have to generate more cap space and also make a decision on the free agents that Bobby outlined. I do think it's a possibility that the Pistons are looking at. They're exploring to see if it makes sense to, really be a player for Naz. I think the fit would be perfect, whether he's starting next to Jalen Duren in the front court at power forward, or maybe he's Tobias Harris back up off the bench with Isaiah Stewart. I think the fit would be perfect. It's just financially, how do you really get to that point? And I think what Bobby kind of outlined was the free agents and creating cap space. I think that's the only way that the Pistons could really be a true player for a Naz Reid. So the final player we have in this article from ESPN is Bobby Portis. And they have him as a good fit with the Detroit Pistons. The deal that they would offer him is 3 years, $54 million. And they have this to say. At the very least, Portis will get an increase from his $13.4 million player option. However, similar to Reid, Portis' market consists of signing or extending with his current team or targeting teams with 14.1 million in non-tax mid-level exceptions. His next contract in Milwaukee could be tied to free agent center Brook Lopez. If Lopez elects to sign elsewhere, the Bucks have the flexibility to give Portis a raise and also use the full non-tax mid-level exception to bring back Gary Harris or sign a starting point guard to replace the injured Damian Lillard. Okay, so there is some things to kind of get into with this. The first thing is the Bobby Portis player option, and the second thing is the Brook Lopez situation and how it does kind of relate to the Bucks and the Pistons a little bit. So Bobby Portis in the player option, solely up to him whether or not he wants to opt in and go back to Milwaukee or opt out and test the free agent market, much like Naz Reid. Now, the second thing with Brook Lopez, he's a UFA. Now, Brook could decide, I'm going to come back and sign with the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know what a figure with that would be because Milwaukee's, cap space situation, it's very expensive. I mean, you have Giannis, you have Dame, you have Kyle Kuzma now. So I don't really know what realistically they could offer him. And there may be some teams out there that can throw him more money to go compete in the playoffs or possibly win an NBA championship. And how that kind of relates to Bobby is I don't really think the Bucks want to lose Bobby Portis. They don't want to lose Brook Lopez. No Dame next year. So you got a core of Kyle Kuzma, Gary Trent if they use, the MLE and Giannis. I don't know how far that team is going to go into the East. And then you also have the Giannis conversation too. What does Giannis want to do? Does he want to run it back? Does he want to get traded this summer? So I think when it kind of relates to Bobby Portis and the Pistons being a good fit, I 100% agree there. I think Bobby Portis would be a great fit in Detroit. He just kind of has that Detroit mold, the type of players that Pistons fans look for when we have conversations about targeting players. Bobby Portis isn't afraid to mix it up. He can stretch it in terms of the shooting the basketball from three. Him coming off the bench with Isaiah Stewart. Good Lord, that would be a lot of fun to watch as Pistons fans. I really like Bobby Portis, and I think if all the reports are true about the Pistons possibly targeting the stretch front court players, whether it's stretch fours or stretch fives, Bobby Portis kind of fits that bill, kind of fits that mold of what they're possibly looking for. And if he's backing up Tobias Harris versus a Simone Fontecchio, I feel like that's a huge upgrade for the Detroit Pistons. But let me know what you guys think of these two players that ESPN has as good fits for them to target this free agency. I'll talk to you guys down below in the comment section. Like always, hope you guys are staying safe. And I will see you guys tomorrow on the podcast at 7 o'clock. We will be joined by Corey Woods, and we're going to be talking about a bunch of fun stuff, NBA draft, Piston news, NBA news. So, see you guys then. Have a good night. Peace.